Story 1. I would actually do my homework. I got decent enough grades to get into college without doing homework, but I might have been able to get better scholarships and recommendation letters if I had done it. Teenage soap poisoning thought that refusing to do homework was a good way to protest. I didn't realize at the time that the only person affected was me. Story 2. I would have dated the quiet guy who actually liked me and probably would have treated me very well. He was very sweet, but I rejected him because he wasn't cool, and I always wondered what could have been. Story 3. I have a long list of what I would do differently, but if I could go back, I wouldn't date anyone until at least senior year and focus more on learning. Boyfriends and girlfriends will come and go in high school, but education is vital. Story 4. I had put all my lunch money into Bitcoin. When I was in high school, Bitcoin was 10 cents each. Every dollar I put into it would be worth over $500,000 today. Story 5. I would try to budget my time a little bit better. I really don't want to go back to those times. It doesn't seem like there were many options for me as a human. Story 6. Date more and take my classes more seriously. I was the lazy smart kid. I just took zeros on homework and didn't study, but I aced all my tests. I was even investigated after getting a perfect score on a history exam. The only classes where that didn't work were my second language classes. I failed Spanish 1, so I took French and passed, but failed French 2. Those two failures brought my GPA down to a 3.3. I was also incredibly shy and had lots of anxiety I didn't recognize at the time because my home life was in turmoil from 7th to 12th grade. This meant I never dated in high school or college. I didn't have a first date until I was in my mid-20s and had gained confidence. Story 7. Where to begin? If I knew then what I know now, I would have approached more women, enjoyed each day more, thought about the future and planned for it, plus made the most of every summer vacation. Story 8. Treated everyone with more kindness. I was in the popular crowd in high school and wasn't always nice to some others who weren't. Nothing crazy, but pretty ashamed of how I treated others. I have tried to make it right with some in the years since high school, but I would definitely do that differently. Story 9. Stayed in high school. I started college when I was 16, and all it got me was an earlier introduction to the working world. I missed most events and activities. Story 10. Actually prepare myself for life after high school. All I cared about was friends and wanting to graduate to not do anything. No plan for a job or anything. If I cared more about the education I was receiving, maybe I would have had passion to start a career. I'm 32 and still don't want to do anything. Story 11. Not smoke weed and trip acid during junior and senior year, and I would have done better in school. I graduated on time, but still, my motivation was non-existent. Story 12. Focusing probably not to smoke so much weed and apply myself. But it's okay. I'm honestly in the best spot I have ever been in my entire adult life. If it wasn't for those hard times I brought upon myself, I wouldn't be sitting here typing this with over 4 years clean from that sweet meth and heroin. So no, I wouldn't do anything differently, actually. Story 13. Not dropping out. Even 30 years later, I wish I had taken the opportunity to drop out when the chance was presented. By trying to do it the normal way and trying to make my family happy, I ended up screwing up my life pretty badly. I lost a lot of educational and employment opportunities that were being offered at the time. I spent the last 30 years working twice as hard for half the return. Story 14. I would have put more effort into academics instead of being the cool kid. I would have also refrained from taking the painkillers prescribed for a baseball injury and prevented the gates of addiction hell from opening. Story 15. Insist on going to the good school that I got into, despite my mother's belief that because it was farther away and I would have to take some city buses instead of the school bus for the closer school, I would just end up skipping school. Story 16. Date more girls. My mom was super religious and raised me to believe that dating was basically wrong, and you should only date someone when you're older and think they're the one. They also had to be Christian. I was in my very late teens before I realized it was all unfounded. It also meant I had very little confidence with girls when I was finally ready to date, which resulted in staying with a very toxic girl, my first serious girlfriend. simply because I wasn't sure if I'd ever find someone better or if this was just simply what relationships were supposed to be like. Story 17. I would ask out every single girl that I liked instead of being afraid of being rejected. I mean, I would probably be rejected by a ton of them, but who cares? Shoot your shot, fellows and ladies. Nothing is sexier than a woman who is not afraid to approach a guy she likes. Story 18. I teach 8th grade and often tell them that they are entering a real sweet spot in life where the ratio of responsibility to freedom is awesome. Lots of freedom and not a lot of responsibilities. Story 19. I thought I had to be a comedian back then. I wish I had buckled down and studied more. Now I have a job where I wake up at 4 in the morning and work a very physical job. Maybe if I had applied myself better, things would be better now. Story 20. I would have done more. I wasn't interested in sports or clubs, but I was also very shy. I don't know. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself to try something. Story 21. I would actually try. I was focused on relaxing and having fun with my friends. It ended up not keeping in contact with most of them and not going to college. My life isn't bad, but I'm curious how it would have played out differently. Story 22. I would not be intimidated by people. I would be confident and speak to whomever, be welcoming, and not be scared of the cool kids because they are just pretending to be confident like everybody else. I would try to befriend a few of the particularly funny, loud people who always made me laugh and whom I always appreciated. They made going to school so much more fun. I would be myself and have a bit of real self-esteem. Story 23. I would find a new group of friends. I always scored in the high 90s in aptitude tests but never really applied myself. I hung out with the rowdies and shunned the intelligent students. Now they are doctors and lawyers and I work in construction. As an adult, I find I had way more in common with them than my criminal buddies. Story 24. Not worry too much about the perceptions and opinions of others, and church and morality pushed on me. Focus on the friends I'd never see again. Work harder in school, especially math. Story 25. I would apply to colleges only in my area. I went out of state because of how bad high school was for me, and it got even worse. I wish I were never here, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets. Story 26. Quit boxing and bodybuilding and got back into football. Even if I had to change schools, I would have had a college scholarship at minimum. I might have even sat on the bench in the professional league. If I couldn't do that, I would have stayed in Florida after I graduated and not come back to go to college. Story 27. Find a different group instead of the bully clique of mean girls that I was too scared to protest to. Never date my high school boyfriend. Study harder. Join theater and speech sooner than my senior year. Story 28. I would have embraced the emo aesthetic a tiny bit more. I love black and pink, lace, black nail polish, harsher and softer elements. Did I just give away my age? Story 29. I would not let my mom's death affect my academics. I love my mom so much, and when she passed, I lost myself. To this day, I have lost all that I am. Even though I still have my support system, which consists of my heaven-sent siblings, I lost a huge portion of myself. I couldn't type this without crying. Years later, and it still hurts. Story 30. I'd probably have been with more girls. Being high school sweethearts with a girl who wasn't aligned with my goals was a mistake. And being loyal didn't pay off. Whatever, though, maybe life would have been worse if I did fool around then. Story 31. Buy all the Bitcoin I could, so I could focus on the things I want to do with my life rather than struggling to make ends meet and never getting to do them. Story 32. If it were me going back to the beginning of summer, I would make sure I actually got healthier since I was pretty hefty, and actually try to improve my social skills instead of being the quiet kid throughout school. Story 33. I punched a kid once. He was picking on a friend of mine and squared up to me when I intervened, so I punched him in the mouth. As these things do at school, it became a big deal, and we were both coerced into having a proper organized fight. We ended up agreeing not to fight in the end, but he ended up getting a lot of grief about it. I found out a few years later that his dad was violently abusive with him. I punched a fair few bullies in school and they deserved it, but that one bothers me to this day. Story 34. I would not have signed up for Spanish class for my freshman year. Most students avoided Spanish class because the teacher had a reputation for being difficult. Story 35. For me, that's a toss-up between actually studying and being more socially active and confident. I was smart enough to pass all of my classes without putting in any real effort, so I never really studied. I could have actually gotten good grades and learned so much more if I had put some effort into it. I was also shy and insecure enough to just assume that nobody really liked me, so I never really dated or partied or did much of anything social. I spent most of my free time in high school at home by myself, just watching TV, playing video games, or spending time on the early internet, class of 2001. If not for the fact that I played multiple sports and was in the school band, my high school years would have been almost entirely wasted. Feels kind of sad to say that, but it really is true. Story 36. Pay attention. I was the worst student and barely got by, but I was only motivated in my photography classes. I wouldn't change that, but I would at least try to be a better student in other classes that I look back on and find interest in now, like history. Story 37. Nothing. I had a great time, and even the mistakes I made, such as choosing York over Dalhousie University, led me to where I am in life. My life isn't perfect, but I'm happy. Story 38. Probably study harder, participate more, join clubs or a sport, and make more friends. I like where I am in life now, but I do wonder how my life would have turned out if I had done those things. Story 39. I would have asked my questions about religion more loudly, and I would have spent more time with boys because then I would have realized earlier that the religion I was raised in doesn't work for me, and that unfortunately boys are still 100% in charge of it. Story 40. Try to get diagnosed for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder earlier instead of when I was 29. Look into the implications of just getting my general educational development certificate and if I could start college a year earlier. I checked out my senior year and had enough credits to graduate a semester early but couldn't because I didn't have a job or wasn't going into the military. See what my chances are of going to a better college. I mean, my college was okay, but I didn't really choose it. I was semi-recruited and basically just let in. Considering when I was going to college, getting into certain schools would have set me up for life. I went to a rural school in the 1980s and 1990s. All of my plans are for the future because there was nothing for me there, and getting out was my plan. No major regrets. I did well in high school. I should probably say something about being less of a degenerate after school, but I never got into any trouble, so what was the real downside? I'm tempted to say something about dating or girls in general, but the risk is too high. Having a kid would have completely changed my trajectory. No thanks. Story 41. Study harder and go to university. It was free in my country back in the 1980s. I got a trade instead, but at 55, my body is broken after so many years in construction. Story 42. At some point during my first year of university, I realized that if I stopped caring so much about what other people think, my life would be vastly improved. I really wish I had realized it a few years earlier, as I suspect I would have enjoyed high school a great deal more than I did. Story 43. I would fail more tests and play on the sports teams I put off for better grades. I would do the social stuff way more and pick subjects that I liked, not those I felt I needed. Story 44. For me, it's about not having a completely bad attitude and bringing out my funny and relaxed side. Today, nobody sees my bad attitude. They all see my funny side. I have way more friends, and most people say I'm down to earth, patient, and hilarious. I certainly was none of those things before. It's true when they say you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. I'm living proof of that. Story 45. When my girlfriend said she wanted to try a double penetration by me and another guy, I persuaded her not to because I had a small penis and was scared she would leave me for the larger penis of that guy we would find. I would go through with it and double penetrate her. Story 46. Punch my bully in the throat. That person said I was gay in front of the entire chemistry class because I didn't think this one girl was the most attractive girl in school. Story 47. Buy $100 worth of Bitcoin in 2010. I try really hard to make all the same core choices through high school and college, and then sell all of it in 2018 and do whatever I want, forever. Story 48. I was an introvert and awkward around girls. I would have complimented them, thanked them, and socialized with them more. It's rough being a teenager, and they should hear that more from their peers. Not just looks, but skills and achievements. Story 49. Take it all a little more seriously. I was in the lower end of the popular crowd and had decent grades and overall good relationships with faculty and peers. But in the last couple of semesters, I slacked off and eventually just made it. Story 50. Stop trying to please all of the people who were awful to me. Be okay with being alone because none of those people liked you. Being alone is better for me, to be honest. Get into a trade because school was not for me. Be louder and get treatment and medication for my depression. Story 51. Stress less about where I was going and just enjoy the ride. I never figured it out by thinking so much, and the only thing that made me realize what I wanted was distance away from school. Story 52. Focus more on school and my grades, which weren't horrible but could be better. Stop being desperate and clingy with idiotic boys. Save the deed for the perfect person like my current partner.